I am Emily, 29 years old, and if I told you my story without proof, you might think it was a fever dream, some grotesque hallucination spun out of an overworked mind. But every word of it is real, and it began the night the police came crashing through my apartment door. I remember the splinters exploding inward, the metallic taste of panic flooding my mouth, and the thunder of boots stomping against the hardwood floor as shouts filled the air. I had been asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, trying to calm myself after a week of feeling watched, of hearing whispers in the empty corners of my flat, of sensing shadows that never seemed to belong to me. When the first officer aimed a flashlight in my eyes, I tried to scream, but the words shriveled in my throat as his beam shifted toward the floor behind him, toward the thing that would unravel everything I thought I knew about life and death. There, on the living room rug, lay a body covered hastily with a torn sheet. I could see the pale hand sticking out, lifeless, still and horribly familiar. My legs carried me forward against my will, as though drawn by a magnet stronger than reason. The sheet slipped back, and the sight slammed into me with merciless clarity. The face beneath it was mine. My lips, my nose, my hair spilling across the carpet in a dark wave. It was me, or something that looked so perfectly like me that denial was impossible. My knees buckled and the room swirled, but even through the dizziness I could hear the officers murmuring. Double? Clone? Identity theft? Words that made no sense but churned my terror into a frenzy. One officer grabbed my arm, shouting that I needed to explain, while another photographed the corpse with a trembling hand. And all I could think was, how can I be standing here alive if my own body lies dead before me? The air reeked of iron and decay, and for a horrifying moment, I wondered if perhaps I was the ghost, if perhaps I had already died without realizing it. But then one of the policemen pressed his hand firmly against my wrist, checking my pulse, confirming my warmth, and muttered, "She's alive." But then what the hell is that? I opened my mouth to answer, but my mind was a labyrinth of shattered logic, and no words would come, only the knowledge that my life had just fractured into a nightmare that would not be easily untangled. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their radios crackling with fragments of static and coded chatter, as if the entire precinct suddenly struggled to find a language that could contain what lay before them. One of them, a tall man with weary eyes and a badge that glinted under the fluorescent light, whispered something I barely caught. "Call the coroner and notify Division 6. Division 6? The words slid into my ears like poisoned glass, unfamiliar yet ominous, and I realized this was no ordinary crime scene. My duplicate, my corpse, my impossible reflection, was treated not as a victim but as evidence, something that belonged to a larger, darker file already in motion. I backed toward the wall, pressing my palms against the plaster as if I could melt through it and escape, my breath shallow, ragged, loud enough to betray my panic. The tall officer looked at me, not with compassion, but with a kind of guarded curiosity, as though I were less a person and more an experiment struggling to understand itself. "Emily," he said, reading my name from a file one of his partners had pulled up. "We need you to come with us. For your safety. For my safety or for containment." My voice cracked when I asked the only question that mattered. If that's me lying there, then what am I? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the others and ordered, "Bag the body. Secure the perimeter. Nobody in or out until the van arrives." I wanted to run, to hurl myself out the window and vanish into the city night, but my legs trembled with the paralysis of dread, my mind spiraling with possibilities I couldn't untangle. Was I adopted? Was this some elaborate prank? Was I losing my grip on reality? Yet none of those explanations fit the cold certainty of seeing my own face lifeless on the rug. They led me past the body, and as I passed it, my eyes locked onto the corpse's half-open hand. In its palm rested something metallic, a tiny key smeared with rust, or was it blood? And before I could react, The sheet shifted with the motion of bagging, the head tilting just enough for me to see the lips. They were parted slightly, as if frozen mid-word, as if this other Emily had died trying to speak. A tremor of instinct whispered that whatever final word she had attempted to utter was meant for me, meant as a warning. I stumbled, clutching my chest, and felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing down. It wasn't just the police watching me. Something else lingered, a presence that made the hair on my neck rise. In that charged silence, I understood one thing with chilling clarity. Finding out who or what had placed my own body in my home was no longer about curiosity. It was about survival. The van arrived just after midnight, its black paint glistening with rain, unmarked yet humming with authority that told me it belonged to no ordinary department. Men in plain uniforms stepped out, faces unreadable, movements precise, as if they had rehearsed this countless times before. They didn't speak to me, didn't acknowledge my trembling form clutched against the wall. Their focus was solely on the body, my body, lifting it carefully into a reinforced container that looked more suited for transporting radioactive material than a corpse. One officer muttered into his headset. "Specimen secured." Specimen. The word carved into me like ice. I was no longer Emily in their eyes. I was data, anomaly, a living question mark threatening the order of their secret world. When I tried to protest, to demand answers, the tall officer raised a hand sharply, silencing me without a word. His eyes burned with the weight of classified knowledge, the kind that crushed ordinary lives if revealed. "You'll come with us," he repeated, but this time it sounded less like an invitation and more like a sentence. My lips trembled as I asked, "Where are you taking me?" He paused, as though weighing how much truth my sanity could bear, then said only, "Somewhere safe." But I could hear the lie embedded in his calm tone. Safe for whom? For me, or for them? They guided me toward a vehicle waiting at the curb. Another black van identical to the first, its back doors yawning open like the mouth of a predator. My instincts screamed to resist, to flee into the rain-slicked streets. Yet a strange compulsion, part fear, part an aching need to know the truth, kept my feet moving. As I climbed inside, I caught a final glimpse of my apartment through the van's tinted glass. The door hung broken, the walls scarred, the carpet stained with a memory that could never be scrubbed away. For a heartbeat, I wondered if I had just left my last trace of ordinary life behind, abandoned to a fate I couldn't yet name. The van doors slammed shut, and darkness swallowed me, punctuated only by the faint hum of the engine and the steady drip of rain sliding down the metal roof. In that cocoon of silence, one thought pulsed louder than any siren. If they had my body, then somewhere there had to be answers. Somewhere, buried under layers of secrecy and lies, there was a reason why Emily, aged 29, was both alive and dead at the same time. The ride stretched into a suffocating eternity. The van's interior stripped bare of comfort, no seats except a steel bench, no windows except a tiny slit too high for me to reach, and the air stale with the scent of oil and metal. The officers said nothing. Their silence was weaponized, forcing me to drown in my own thoughts, each one darker than the last. My fingers twitched against my knees, itching to grasp that key I'd seen in the corpse's hand, but they hadn't let me touch it. They had bagged it with gloved efficiency, sealing it inside an evidence pouch before I could protest, and now the image of it haunted me, glimmering behind my eyelids like a forbidden's talisman. What door did it open? Why had my dead double clutched it in her final moments? Every possible answer felt like a trap. Hours might have passed, or maybe just minutes. Time was a cruel illusion inside that moving cage. Finally, the van lurched to a halt, brakes hissing, and the door screeched open to reveal a facility half swallowed by the foggy night. It wasn't a police station, nor any hospital I recognized. The structure loomed like a bunker, brutalist concrete scarred by weather, guarded by floodlights that sliced through mist like interrogation beams. Razor wire curled atop high fences, and cameras followed every angle, blinking red as if hungry for secrets. I was ushered out, my shoes splashing against puddles, and led down a corridor that smelled faintly of disinfectant and fear. The deeper we went, the more sterile it became. White walls, metallic doors sealed with electronic locks, and the hum of unseen machinery vibrating beneath the floor. I whispered, barely audible, "What is this place?" But the officer beside me ignored the question. Instead, he swiped a card, opening a door into a chamber colder than winter. Inside, a single table awaited me, stainless steel with a folder resting on top. "Sit," he ordered. My body obeyed before my mind could resist. When he slid the folder toward me, I hesitated before flipping it open, and what I saw shattered the fragile boundaries of my reality. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, each one of me in different places, different times, but wearing clothes I didn't remember, standing beside strangers I had never met. Some images showed me smiling, others fleeing, others lying motionless under tarps. It was a gallery of my existence fractured into impossible versions, as though I had lived 1,000 parallel lives and died 1,000 parallel deaths. My throat closed, words strangled before they could escape, and the officer's expression remained flat as he asked, "Do you know which one is really you?" The question slammed into me with more force than the sight of my own corpse had. It wasn't just the content of the folder that rattled me, it was the cold certainty in his tone, as if even he doubted I was real. My lips parted, but my voice failed, my mind clawing desperately for coherence amid the avalanche of impossible photographs. They weren't crude fakes, no jagged cutouts or digital artifacts. These were flawless, lived-in moments. My laughter frozen in a park I'd never visited, my hands reaching for documents I had never signed, my figure entering buildings I had never stepped inside. Each photo was time-stamped, labeled with coordinates, case numbers, all meticulously catalogued as though someone or something had been tracking, not just me, but versions of me across decades. My hand trembled as I pointed to one image where I appeared bruised, restrained, eyes wide with terror. "That's not me," I whispered. Though even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. What if memory itself was unreliable? What if gaps existed that I had simply never noticed? The officer leaned forward, his voice a low growl of restrained impatience. "Emily, you were found alive beside your own dead body. Your DNA matches both. Your fingerprints match both. The key found in her hand your hand unlocks, something we've been chasing for years. You need to tell us how you're involved." The room tilted, nausea surging, and I stammered, "I don't know. I swear I don't know." For the first time, I saw something crack in his facade, a flicker of unease, quickly buried. He tapped the folder with 2 fingers, then pulled a final photograph from the back. My stomach clenched when I saw it. The photo showed me standing in front of this very facility, dated a year ago. I was staring directly into the camera, almost daring whoever took it to follow me inside. But I had never been here before tonight. My pulse thundered, sweat dampening my palms. "That can't be real," I muttered. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a button on the wall, and the steel door behind him hissed open. A woman entered, her hair tied back severely, her lab coat crisp, her eyes sharp as scalpels. She carried a small locked case, which she placed beside the folder, before addressing me for the first time. "Emily," she said smoothly, almost kindly, "before we can help you, we need to determine whether you're the original or the copy." The word copy slithered into my ears, corrosive and cold, and I recoiled as if struck. Original or copy? What did that even mean? I stared at the woman, my pulse hammering, while her calm expression made me feel like a specimen under a microscope rather than a living human with memories, fears, and a name. She unlocked the small case with deliberate precision, revealing a set of tools that looked neither medical nor mechanical but something in between. Sleek silver instruments etched with symbols I couldn't decipher, and vials of fluid that shimmered unnaturally under the harsh lights. My throat dried as she selected one of the devices, a needle-thin wand connected to a handheld monitor, and said, "This will measure resonance." Resonance. The officer beside her shifted uncomfortably, as though even he disliked the procedure. But he didn't intervene. I clenched my fists, trying to summon courage, and demanded, "I'm not your experiment. I'm a person. You can't just decide if I'm real or not." The woman tilted her head, almost pitying. "Reality is negotiable, Emily. Authenticity is not. One of you was made. One of you was born. We must know which." The word "made" sent a chill up my spine. Memories flashing my mother braiding my hair as a child, my father teaching me to ride a bike, birthdays, heartbreaks, all the fragile, ordinary fragments that stitched together who I believed myself to be. Could those be fabricated? Could every smile, every tear, every scar be nothing but programmed illusions? She touched the wand to my skin just below my collarbone, and the monitor flickered to life, emitting a low hum that vibrated through my bones. My vision blurred, not from pain, but from the flood of emotions crashing over me. Fear, anger, defiance. The screen displayed pulsing waves, jagged peaks that seemed almost alive. The woman frowned, whispering, "Unstable, fluctuating." She adjusted the device, pressed harder, and the hum rose to a shriek before cutting out entirely. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. The officer broke it with a voice taut with urgency. "What does it mean?" She hesitated before replying, "She's both." My heart slammed against my ribs, and I shouted, "Both what?" Her gaze locked on mine, unblinking. "Clinical. Both original and copy. 2 signatures, 1 body. A paradox walking." My legs trembled, and I gripped the edge of the steel table to keep from collapsing. "That's impossible," I rasped. But she only whispered, almost to herself, "Impossible is exactly what we've been waiting for." The word paradox clung to me like a second skin, heavier than the steel walls around us, heavier than the corpse I'd seen lying in my apartment. The officer's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, leaving the woman's revelation to echo inside my skull. 2 signatures, 1 body. Both original and copy. I wanted to scream that they were wrong, that I was just Emily, just a 29-year-old woman who paid bills late, who spilled coffee on her work notes, who cried alone on her birthday when friends forgot to call. I wanted to insist that nothing about me was extraordinary, that I didn't belong in a secret facility cataloging impossible versions of myself. But even as the protests formed, memories prickled at the edges of my consciousness, moments I could not place. A hospital hallway drenched in red light. A man's voice whispering my name in a language I didn't know. A door with the same keyhole as the rust-stained key clutched by the corpse. They flared like sparks, uninvited, and vanished just as quickly, leaving me shaken. "You implanted something in me," I accused, though the words felt weak, desperate. The woman's expression didn't change. Not implanted. Inherent. She closed the case, snapped the lock shut, and addressed the officer. "She must be transferred to the archive immediately. If she is unstable, containment here is insufficient." The archive. The way she said it, capitalized by her tone, sent ice through my veins. The officer shook his head. "The director will never approve. She's evidence for the tribunal." First, their disagreement washed over me like storm surf, but one phrase caught and held. Tribunal. That meant a trial, judgment, perhaps execution. My panic broke through paralysis, and words tumbled out. I don't know what you think I am, but I didn't ask for this. You can't put me on trial for existing. My voice cracked, and for the first time, the woman softened, if only slightly. We're not putting you on trial, Emily. We're putting reality itself on trial. You are the witness, the proof, and maybe the weapon. My knees buckled, and the officer caught my arm, his grip ironclad. His eyes, though stern, betrayed a flicker of unease, maybe even pity. Then pray the tribunal sees you as more than a threat, he murmured, as they led me down another corridor, past glass walls revealing glimpses of rooms filled with files, machines and tanks holding things I couldn't identify. I realized the nightmare was no longer about discovering the truth. It was about surviving long enough to decide which truth I could endure. The corridor seemed endless, a tunnel carved through concrete and silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic hum of fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly overhead, as though warning of the power coiled inside this place. My reflection followed me in the glass panes we passed, but sometimes, God help me, it didn't move in sync. I caught it once, lagging half a second behind, its lips curving in a grimace I hadn't made. I stumbled, blinking hard, but when I looked again the reflection behaved normally, a perfect echo of my terror-stricken face. The officer guiding me tightened his grip, misinterpreting my hesitation as defiance, and urged me forward. We reached a chamber larger than any I had yet seen. Circular, domed ceiling vanishing into shadows above, its floor engraved with concentric rings filled with symbols. At the center stood a platform where chains hung loosely from the ceiling, glinting like silver snakes. A small audience of figures in dark robes waited silently, their hoods obscuring their features. The woman with the case addressed them with a curt nod. Subject secured. The robed figures murmured, voices blending in an unsettling chorus that resonated in my chest more than my ears, and one of them stepped forward. His hood slipped slightly, revealing a face both ageless and exhausted, lines etched deep as though he had carried the weight of centuries. Emily, he intoned, and hearing my name from his mouth chilled me more than any siren or shout. You stand before the tribunal. My legs weakened and I shook my head. I didn't commit a crime. He raised a hand, silencing me. Existence is not a crime, but destabilization is. You are a fracture in the lattice, both origin and replica, a seam between realities. That seam widens. Left unchecked, it will tear the fabric. His words were incomprehensible yet undeniable, landing in my gut like truths I had always known but never named. The officer beside me released his hold, and the chains were lowered, their clinking echo filling the chamber. Panic flared, raw and suffocating. No! I cried, backing away. But there was nowhere to run. Two robed attendants caught my arms and guided me forced me onto the platform, securing the chains around my wrists. Cold metal bit into my skin, a tether binding me to a judgment I didn't understand. The tribunal leader spoke again. We will not destroy you, Emily. Not yet. First we will see what you open. And at his signal, the woman placed the rusted key, the one taken from the corpse, into my trembling hand. The key burned cold in my palm, heavier than any metal should be, as if it carried not only weight but memory. My fingers trembled, resisting the instinct to drop it. Yet the tribunal's eyes, hidden though they were, pressed on me with suffocating force, daring me to refuse. The chains rattled each time my body quivered, every sound echoing through the chamber like thunder, magnifying my fear. What does it open? I asked, my voice little more than a rasp. No one answered. The silence was deliberate, calculated, forcing me to confront the object without guidance. The rust on its teeth looked fresh, too fresh, as though it had been pulled from a wound rather than a lock. A whisper threaded through my mind, soft, feminine, eerily familiar. Don't turn it. My heart jolted. The voice was mine, but distorted, as though carried from a distance across water. I gasped, eyes darting around the chamber. But everyone remained still, watching. "Did you hear that?" I demanded, panic tightening my throat. The robed leader tilted his head. "Hear what?" My pulse pounded in my ears and I stammered, Someone just warned me." His eyes narrowed, ancient and unreadable. "Already the fracture speaks." He gestured toward the platform, and suddenly the concentric rings on the floor ignited with pale light, symbols glowing like embers waking from slumber. The air vibrated, a low hum reverberating through my bones, and the key in my hand pulsed in rhythm with it. My instincts screamed to resist, but the chains bound me tight. Against my will, my fingers closed around the key, turning it in the empty air as if it had found an invisible lock. A click resounded not from metal, but from space itself, a sound like the snapping of reality's spine. The dome above rippled and a fissure split open, revealing not sky but a corridor of shifting images. Faces, places, entire lives flashing past in disjointed fragments. I saw myself in a hospital, screaming as machines failed. I saw myself in a courtroom, blood staining my hands. I saw myself standing triumphant on a stage, crowds chanting my name. 1,000 Emilys living 1,000 fates, all stitched together in the crack widening overhead. The robed figures chanted, their voices rising, and the leader declared, "The archive opens." My body convulsed, torn between terror and awe, as the whisper returned my own voice again, but clearer this time, desperate. "Choose carefully. Only one of us survives." The fissure yawned wider, spilling torrents of light that seared my vision yet pulled me forward with magnetic force, as if every version of me was beckoning, clawing for recognition. Chains rattled against my frantic movements, the key still embedded in my hand like an extension of bone. I tried to shut my eyes, but the images burned through my lids. A child Emily clutching a bloodied teddy bear, a soldier Emily firing into shadows, a bride Emily abandoned at the altar, a prisoner Emily with numbers tattooed on her arm. Each reflection screamed soundlessly, their mouths open in accusation or plea, and the cacophony of their silence broke me. "Stop it," I shrieked, jerking against the restraints until my wrists bled. The robed leader only raised his hands higher, his voice booming over the chamber. "The archive demands selection. She is the fulcrum." I didn't understand, but the whisper my own fractured echo returned. Harsher, urgent. "If you don't choose, they will." My throat tightened. "Choose what?" I cried, voice raw, desperate. The whisper answered, "Which Emily lives? Which Emily dies?" My heart threatened to split in two, hammering against ribs that felt too fragile to contain it. Around me, the light intensified, forming doors out of the fissure. 12, 100, each one a threshold to a different life I had glimpsed. Some shimmered with hope, others bled darkness, and all waited for my decision. The woman with the case stepped forward, her face lit by the surreal glow. For the first time, her clinical mask cracked. Fear trembled in her voice. "Don't let them force you. The archive isn't just storage, it's a prison. Every choice seals a fate." I clutched the key tighter, its teeth cutting into my flesh, blood mingling with rust. The leader roared, "Turn the lock again. Seal the fracture." Their chant rose, thunderous, insistent, drowning my thoughts. I felt as though I was dissolving, shards of identity peeling away with each passing second. My childhood laughter, my teenage heartbreaks, my quiet nights staring at the ceiling, all of it frayed. The whisper screamed now, echoing so loudly it rattled my skull. "Pick one, or you will vanish into them all." I looked up at the storm of doors. My reflection multiplied infinitely, and with tears scorching my face, I realized survival was not about resisting. It was about choosing which version of me deserved to remain real. The doors loomed above me, infinite yet intimate, each one humming with a rhythm that resonated inside my veins, as if they were arteries of possibility. My breath caught as I glimpsed futures bleeding into presents, presents collapsing into pasts, all coiled together like serpents. My wrists throbbed where the chains had cut through skin, warm blood dripping onto the glowing rings, feeding them as if sacrifice were the price of sight. One door flickered with an image of peace. Emily in a sunlit cottage, children's laughter ringing, hands stained not with blood but with flour. Another quaked with dread. Emily, bound in courtroom shackles, cameras flashing as judges spat condemnation. A third pulsed with fire. Emily leading crowds through burning streets, her voice hoarse with fury, a banner of revolution clenched in her fist. Each door was a demand, each version a bargain, and the whisper surged again, relentless. Choose before they close for you. I clenched the key, my knuckles white, my mind fracturing under the pressure. The robed leader stretched his hand toward the most luminous door, the cottage. The laughter, the illusion of serenity, and bellowed, "This is the correction. This is her rightful fate." The chorus thundered their agreement, shadows shuddering against the light. But something in me rebelled, an ember of defiance refusing to be smothered. The woman with the case shook her head violently, her voice slicing through the chaos. "That's not life, that's containment. They want you docile, erased." My chest tightened, the decision ripping me apart. If I stepped toward safety, I might lose the truth forever. If I chose fire, I might burn the world and myself with it. The doors trembled as though aware of my hesitation, their edges cracking, energy bleeding into the chamber, destabilizing the air itself. Sparks rained down like falling stars, scorching the ground, igniting the scent of charred stone. I cried out, torn, and the whisper my other self spoke softer now, almost kind. "Emily, whichever you pick, I will be the one you kill." The words gutted me. My knees buckled, chains rattling like a final warning. The crowd's chant rose into a deafening roar, demanding my submission. But beneath it all, my own heartbeat thundered louder, steady, primal. I realized then that choice was not a gift, it was a weapon. And whoever wielded it would shape not just one Emily's destiny, but all of them. And so I chose, not because I sought safety or spectacle, but because I refused to be decided for. The key bit into my palm, hot and accusing, and with a movement that felt both like prayer and defiance, I turned away from the glowing cottage of domesticated ease, away from the door that promised quiet consumption of my life into a soft, forgetful sleep. I reached instead toward the door that thrummed with fire and fury, where crowds burned with a hunger that matched my own. For a heartbeat I thought I might be, consumed by the tribunal's will, by the farce they called correction. But what had begun, as a trial transformed under the raw pressure of my refusal? I felt the fissure below us tremble as if the world itself waited for my verdict. The robed leader lunged, his command slicing through the hum like a blade, but I moved first. Instead of allowing the key to become their instrument of tidy erasure, I smashed it, broke the ritual where they pretended to hold destiny in their palms. Metal splintered and rang, and the sound was a small, clear rebellion. The shard I created I did not use as weapon against another human. I used it to cut through the illusion the archive had spun around us. When the torn key struck the rip, the doors shuddered and the images that had been offered as choices lost their smooth edges. The flickers that once promised comfort and the ones that promised revenge fragmented into shards of honest memory, some beautiful, some grotesque, all true. The tribunal's chant dissolved into murmurs, as staff and guards glimpsed what the archive had hidden, faces of people whose lives had been parceled out to policy, lives claimed in the name of stability. The woman with the case stumbled, and in that instant the officers stepped back from their scripts. The man who had once told me I was being taken for my safety, the one with the weary eyes, unbolted my chains. He did not free me to flee, but to speak. So I spoke. I spoke names and dates, and the way promises had been folded into files. I spoke of betrayals scored as procedure and of the small mercies that no file could fully capture. A mother's hand smoothing hair, a friend's phone call in the night, the unremarkable courage of choosing to wake up again. People listened because the air no longer thrummed with theatre. It vibrated with confession. Techs who had only ever logged specimens brought forward their own stories. A clerk who filed papers by the thousands revealed memos that proved the archive's policies had been built on fear, not science. The tribunal scrambled to salvage authority, to rewrite the script that justified choosing which lives deserved to be set aside and which were to be preserved. But once the lies are shown in daylight, they wrinkle and collapse. We turned their own records into evidence of corruption, and that evidence moved like a contagion through the facility and out into the city. I could have left there. The rain waiting, the world outside, anonymous and wide, but I stayed to watch the machine I had been, forced into become a thing that could be undone. I collected the folders, copied the files, and handed them over to a few trembling allies who promised they would not bury the truth. Then I stepped onto the facilities, steps and spoken to, cameras that moments before had meant to entrap me. I told the world how the archive had trafficked in broken stories and how easy it was for power to classify pain as anomaly. I named their procedures, their euphemisms, and their budgets. I told of the key and the rusted edge of what they called certainty. The response was not overnight revolution. It never is. It was small at first: articles, whispers, a single activist group posting documents. Then more voices joined. Survivors, families, a network of people who refused the tidy lies. Laws that had once permitted covert cataloguing were questioned. Committees were formed. Journalists dug and would not stop. The tribunal's leaders were not all punished in dramatic fashion. Some resigned. Some disappeared into quiet retirements with their reputations tarnished. But what mattered more was the shift. Communities demanded restitution, oversight, and the right to tell their own stories. I learned that justice was messy. There were no instant heals, only long processes of reparation, apologies that sometimes rang hollow, settlements that could not return time. I bore the scars my wrists marked where chains had held me, my nights called by echoes of voices who had not been chosen. But I felt a new thing, a durable strength that sat beside fragility instead of replacing it. I built small rituals to honor those versions of me and others that had been nearly erased. I lit candles for them in the windows of my apartment and asked neighbors to keep one lit for anyone whose life had been misfiled by bureaucracy. I organized meetings where people who had been treated as anomalies testified and found that speaking their truth stitched loose edges back into people. Some sought revenge. Others sought legal redress. Many sought only acknowledgement. I supported them all, because survival meant not just defending my own breath but amplifying a chorus of broken voices until policy began to change. The archive's doors closed behind reforms and public scrutiny, but its memory remained like a scar on the city's skin. I returned to ordinary days, paying bills, making coffee, falling imperfectly in love again. Imperfectly. I built small, stubborn routines that grounded me. I accepted nothing from those who had tried to catalogue me, but demanded restitution for those who had been harmed. I taught others how to read the files we recovered, to tell their stories in public squares, and the eye reclaimed truth and vowed they would not silence us again. Like and subscribe.